Hi, are you learning all about CSS Basics for Beginners and want to know about CSS positioning, float, fixed, absolute, left, right, top, bottom, and how to use it in real world projects? If so, you're in the right place. CSS Positioning. CSS Positioning has many properties. Static is one. This is the default, just in the flow of the page. We cannot alter it with left, right, top, and bottom for any elements. Relative is very handy. The item is positioned relative to its normal content, and we can alter it. We can say position relative top 1 EM, left 2 EM to keep it down from the top a little bit and in from the left a little bit. Fixed is very handy, and you see it on a lot of shopping websites. The element is fixed and scroll has no effect on it, and we can alter it with left, right, top, bottom. You might see a shop now or add to cart button permanently on the bottom of your page. As you scroll up and down, it doesn't move. Absolute means in one spot, but it can also overlap elements, which we have to be careful with, and we can alter it top, bottom, left, or right. You could put your mobile nav always in the top right corner, overlapping whatever element is there. And sticky is very handy. It's based on scrolling and stops in one place, and we can alter where we want it to stop with top, left, bottom, or right. You might see this when you scroll down someone's website and then the nav bar sticks on top and you keep scrolling and you can still see the nav bar. Then when you scroll back up, the nav bar comes back down a small bit and stays where it was originally. So in our project, we're going to have to create a new CSS file, examples CSS.css. We'll store all our CSS examples from now on in this file. And we'll also use our examples.html page, which you can see on the left. On the right then, you can see you have to click on the examples button on the Web Development for Beginners project. This is where we'll do all our coding. We can see here an example. On the left, we can see the examples.css. We're going to create a positioning example with CSS inside it. And on the bottom, we're just going to create some HTML on the examples.html page. And then we see the result on the right hand side. We can see we're on the examples page on the browser. And we can see our examples div with the funny color inside the box. And then we just set different values for the position to show the examples. Hi, before we move on, please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Thank you. So let's have a look at some CSS positioning. So to do this, we're going to use the examples page on our Web Development for Beginners project. We can see here on the right when we click the button, we don't have anything on our examples page yet. So we'll create the HTML for the examples page here, and we'll also use a separate CSS file to link to it, so that we don't clutter up our main CSS file for our project. So let's go over here on the left. CTRL and plus to zoom in. First, we'll create our new CSS style sheet. We'll right click on the CSS folder and go new file. We call this example CSS. .css. So now that we have our new style sheet created, naturally we're going to have to link this now to any HTML page we want to actually use it in. So let's go ahead and do that now before we put anything into the file. Let's go into our index.html. We can see here on the top we already have our My Style linked. Let's insert another style sheet here now. So in VS Code, if you type link, then hit enter, it'll presume you're putting in a style sheet, and it'll go the rel equals style sheet and the h reference where you want the style sheet to point to where it's actually coming from. So we're going to go CSS / and you can see here VS Code has found our new example CSS.css file. So just hit enter there. And we've now linked our new CSS sheet to our index page. So let's go ahead now and copy this link onto our examples page also. Let's go into our examples.html file. We go up to the top and just paste it underneath the My Style CSS link. We now have two style sheets linked to each HTML page. The main one here, My Style, is for all the styles connected to the actual project we're working on. And the example CSS one is going to be just for all the extra learning we're doing. So let's go ahead. And we go into our examples page in HTML. And let's create our first example for positioning. So underneath the header here, we go into our examples page. Underneath the header here, still inside the body, we're going to use a div element. But first, let's just put in a H2, heading 2, and we call this the positioning example. And CTRL and save, and refresh on your browser if you don't see the changes. Now I want this to look nice and organized, so let's just put a horizontal line, which is another element, in above and below this text. So HR for horizontal rule, and enter. And we just put one in underneath H2 also. So HR, horizontal rule, and hit enter. Now let's first create just a container, and we put a border around it, just to hold our positioning div to show us how to position stuff. So div is a general element we can create. Just go div and hit enter in VS Code. And you can see now it's actually created a closing div tag. And we assign this div a class called, we'll say, container, positioning container, because this is the square box we want, just to show the example. Class, we call it positioning container. And inside here then, we're going to have a little box that we want to show how it's positioned left, right. So we're going to create another div inside this div. And we're going to put a class on this one. And we're going to call this positioning div. This is just going to be a small box inside the main one to illustrate and show how we can position stuff. Of course, we can't see anything on the right yet because there's nothing to see. There's nothing inside these containers. So now a handy thing you can do here also. Let's go into our example CSS file. And let's put the HTML page on the bottom. Click and drag it all the way down. And now we see the HTML file on the bottom and the CSS on the top. So now in our examples.css file, let's actually create this div. Let's put a border around it and give it a certain size, the positioning container. Just a big square box for us to work in. So remember we call the class on the main positioning container, positioning container. So we go dot for class, positioning container. So let's go ahead and set the width and height for it. We'll say width 400 pixels. You can use pixels or EM here. Height 400 pixels. Now, of course, we still can't see it because we don't have any content or border. So let's just give it a border. Border 1 pixel solid. And let's go black. So CTRL and S for save in your project or refresh in your browser window. We can now see we have a black square 400 by 400 on the right hand side in our browser. That's our positioning container. Now let's create our positioning div. We'll do the same as above, just make it smaller and a different background color so we can see what we're doing. So we're going to create the class positioning div. And let's make this smaller, just maybe 100 pixels square. So we go width 100 pixels, height 100 pixels. And we'll give this a border also. 1 pixel solid black. And let's just give this an actual background color also. So we go background color, and we can just choose from anything we have here on autocomplete in VS Code. And click save and refresh in our browser. Now we can see our container and our little div inside that we're going to attach the positioning class onto. So let's go ahead now and see if we can alter the position of this div in many ways. Okay, I'll have to edit this video. So first, let's create a class called position relative. And in here, we're going to put position, if you type position, and defaults to relative. And we'll say from the top 1 EM, or even left 1 EM, and from the top down 2 EMs. So let's go left 1 EM, top 2 EM. Now, let's go ahead and apply this class name onto our positioning div. So if we go down here into the HTML, we can see our positioning div here. Let's put in that class name now and see if it actually affects our positioning div. So the class name is position relative. And we can see on the right hand side, it has actually moved. So if we go left 10 EM and save, we can see our little square has moved much more from the left. And if we go top 20 EM, we can see it has gone right down to the bottom. So let's just reset them to 1 and 2 and click save and refresh in our browser. That's position relative. Our inside box is positioned relative to its outside container. Now let's have a look at position fixed. We'll call this class position fixed. And we go position and hit enter, but we're going to change this now to fixed. And let's fix it left 1 EM, top 2 EM. So now let's go in to our HTML on the bottom here, and instead of using position relative, let's change this class name to the one we just created, position fixed. Now look what's happened. We've actually fixed this on the top of the page, 1 EM down, 2 EM down on the top, and 1 EM down from the left. And we can see that is now fixed on our page. It's not actually relative to the container that it was in. So now let's just try position absolute. So we create a class position absolute. And again, we go position and change the defaults to absolute. And we'll put this in the corner, so we'll say top 0 and right 0. So this means the absolute positioning will ignore all other elements and place it right smack bang in the top right corner. So let's now put that class instead on our positioning div in HTML. So we'll just replace position fixed with position absolute. And we can see now our square is wedged in the top right corner of our browser. Let's just check that now for scrolling down. So you can see we don't have any content in our page, so we can't actually scroll down. So let's just go into our HTML here. And we'll put in page breaks and copy and paste many of them to give us a page to scroll down on. So break is BR, hit enter. Now let's copy one of these and create many page breaks, just so we can actually scroll down on our page. Now what happens when we scroll down on our page? We can see the position absolute has our little square box permanently in the top right corner. When you scroll down, we can't see it. When we scroll back up, it's still there. And it overlaps other elements, which we have to be careful with. Now that we can scroll up and down on our page, let's try the position sticky. So we're going to create another class called position sticky. We're going to go position sticky. And where do we want it to stick? Well, just maybe at the top. We go top 0. Now let's put our position sticky class onto our HTML element, position sticky. We can see now our little box is stuck to the top of the element, which is normal. So when we scroll down, we can see it actually sticks top 0 in the browser as our element moves. And then of course when our element catches up, it takes it off the screen. That's sticky. Our little box is now sticky inside its container. This is very handy, and you see it on a lot of e-commerce websites where the shop now or add to cart button might be sticky. How cool is that? So to get the files used in this example, the HTML reference project, just go to the GitHub link that's down in the description of this video. You can have a look at it here. So a GitHub repository is just a location on the internet hosted by a company called Git that most developers like to share or store their code in, either for their own use or to share with other developers. The repository on GitHub is just a folder used to store code or files, etc. Let's have a look at each folder. So when we're in the repository here, you can see the name of the repository there, actions along the top. You can see the main folder here, and there's a README file too. So if you want, you can just click onto the folders and see what's inside them and download the code from there. But to get all the code, you're going to go over here to the code button. We're going to click and download zip file. Once that's downloaded, go into your downloads folder. Then we need to extract it. So you're going to Windows, you're going to right click and extract all. Now let's just have a look at these files in VS Code. So we're going to go to our desktop. We're going to open up Visual Studio Code. And now we're going to open the folder that we just extracted. Open folder on the left. And we're going to go to Downloads. And here we are. And you can see here on the Explorer view on the left, there's the folder we can click to expand. And here's the reference project folder. And here's the HTML file, so we click on that, and there's the code. You can use this for reference or to rebuild your project if something goes wrong. Hi, I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please like, share, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos in the Web Development for Beginners playlist. See you next time.